Welcome. This is the podcast series dedicated to living a revenue culture. Everybody wants to make the most money they can, and they want to have their company last for a long time. Revenue science has taught us that the only way you maximize your profit is to first optimize your people. And this podcast is dedicated to bringing you those individuals out there in the real world working on this. And they have some great stories, they have some great ideas, and they can help us take a look at what the future is going to be. We do this twice a month, and we do it, we've been doing it almost 2 years now, a little over 2 years actually. And so today, our guest is Nicole Lane, and I just had the privilege of working with her, going through her certification of the TTI SmartRev as a Chief Revenue Officer. And having worked with her through that, it's wonderful to see all of her skills in interpersonal training and team development and organizational development and communications all come together around how does an individual work in an organization that's trying to get an optimized people first culture to make a lot of money. And so in addition to having the chance to work with her and see her skills go live, she's also working on an MBA in organizational leadership. And if I were to pick a topic that the world's going to need for the next 50 years, it's how do we get really good organizational leaders. So that's the right place for her. And she and her partner, Dan, who actually will be on a future podcast, they've created a new company called Uncovered Revenue. And I'm really going to be excited to have her share a little bit about what that is and where that's going here in a few minutes. So welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm excited to share more about revenue science and how we're using it to help businesses.
Terrific. So start with, you've got a fascinating background. And one of the things, I know that you made clear is you are not a traditional selling person. That's not who you are, but you have embraced passing value on to others. So share your story. And as you're talking about the story, make sure we get to the launching of Uncovered Revenue and where you think that's going to go.
Okay. So throughout my life, I have experienced working with all kinds of different teams and organizations, whether it was in part of my career or as a stay-at-home mom with kids and organizations and clubs with kids stuff, with charities and fundraising, and then back into business situations and then into coaching. And so there was one common denominator with all of those things, and it was people. And maybe that says enough. But different people from different backgrounds have different strengths and goals and motivations to get their agendas and get things done. And so some of those teams were really good and some of them were really dysfunctional. And so when I think about the dysfunctional teams, I think it's because there's so much miscommunication and misunderstanding between people. And so when I started in the coaching space and discovered the assessment tools, I realized that I could help people communicate better if they had better self-awareness. If you can understand yourself, you can work better with others. So as part of that self-awareness, then you begin to understand what makes other people tick and their motivations. And so that's when I formed my company, Uncovered Potential. So I was using the assessment tools in that company and helping people realize their strengths, how to understand themselves and understand others, and teaching people how to communicate better. But if something was still missing, there was like a missing link, and I was talking to people every day that hated their jobs. They were burned out. They were business owners who couldn't find people to hire, couldn't retain people. I knew there had to be more than just self-awareness and communication skills and and learning more about other people. And then I came across revenue science. And when I started studying revenue science with my business partner, Dan, we realized the big disconnect there was that the people in the organizations, they weren't working towards a unified purpose. They didn't have, they weren't on the same page. And so when we realized that, if we could combine that with the uncovered potential, optimizing people around this unified message, because of our, studying revenue science, we realized we could make a greater impact in people's businesses and their lives and their relationships. And so with my passion for working with people, combined with Dan's business experience and coaching, Uncovered Revenue was created.
Wow.
And so our purpose with Uncovered Revenue is to uncover hidden revenue in businesses.
I love that as a theme, because there, as you were uncovering in individuals who they were and how they interacted, carrying that same logic and that same set of skills forward into an organization, and helping them align it to a purpose and then to a strategy, just makes all the sense in the world.
It does. And I think when people get behind whatever that purpose is, when they know what it is and they know the purpose of their job, they're more engaged, and it aligns not just with their work life, but in this new world, it's the life work balance, or like putting it all together. And so you just become better organizations because people are happier.
It's interesting how in my career, how seldom purpose is allowed to come out. People cover it up, and it's almost like they're ashamed of it. And the research and the life experience both say that when there is a purpose there, and you don't have to be a research scientist to see it, organizations that have purpose, whether it's the Navy SEALs or it's the Boys and Girls Club, or you can go through a list that has purpose, and you see energy, and you see creativity, and you see collaboration, and all those things. Is that the kind of experience you're talking about?
It is, and I just had a conversation, and she's going to kill me, but I don't care. My daughter and I just had a conversation about her job and her career, and she recently graduated from college, and she's working for a boutique, and she needs more money. I mean, she's starting out. She needs more money to meet her financial obligations, and she wants more vision for her future. And so she was ready to just start looking for a job somewhere else, because she didn't know how to have the conversation, and she didn't know, she didn't think they could meet her needs. She just made some assumptions there. And so thankfully she has me, and we talked through this and talked about, the purpose of the organization and what she wants to do with her life. And we were able to, have a conversation from a SmartRev type perspective, where it was like, okay, well, what are you offering them? What value can you transfer, where you're going to help them reach their goals, and they're going to help you reach your goals? You can create a long-term partnership instead of a revolving door for them of employees and a revolving door for you of new organizations, new people, maybe terrible, leaders, where if you can just have this conversation and maybe get on the same page, maybe you can stay, and maybe there is a way to work things out. And I think that going forward, if organizations can be open to these kinds of conversations with young people and the new people coming into the workforce, because it's not always about money. It's how can we get where we need to be together? And so she was able to have that conversation because of this because of the way that we look at revenue science, and I was able to, work with her to have that conversation.
Wow. How did she feel afterwards?
She was so nervous about it, but I think that, working with the boutique owners, they're surprised by her maturity, and her ability to, I think that alone added value, that she was willing to stay and try to figure it out and be loyal. So they were really happy, and now they're trying to figure out a way that this can be a long-term thing. And so I think it worked out really well.
You used in that, I love this story, and in there you used another term that I so infrequently hear, and that's about the whole concept of what is the value we're transferring out of all this stuff we're doing, and helping people recognize what it is they do that actually creates value that somebody's willing to pay for. Is almost rare today, and that's too bad. We get into this mechanized thing. We're like as individuals, we're like an assembly line. We keep doing the same thing over and over again, not realizing that maybe what we're doing is actually subtracting value, or at least not adding as much as possible.
Right. And rather than start over somewhere else or start a different conversation from the beginning point, just having a conversation and building long-term relationships rather than just starting over every time, I think adds so much more value to clients also.
So as you created uncovered revenue, it was value and helping people recognize the value that was really there or should be there. Is that part of it?
Well, when we started, we were working with clients and we were offering solutions, whether it was like a quick fix in the form of an assessment or a workshop, like we're going to come in and teach your people how to communicate with each other and then roll out, and it's all going to be so much better. And as we started studying the revenue science and transitioning away from that mentality more so, a lot of things came out. Like, I realized how much information is in the assessment tools and the impact that has on someone's life and their mindset, and how much value it can bring to the person and to the business. And so we've transitioned away from being an assessment company or just doing assessments. And now it's funny, my mentor recently said, DISC assessments can't talk. They can't solve problems. People solve the problems. So to just give someone a DISC assessment or some type of assessment, they're very valuable, but the value is understanding how to use them. And so you wouldn't, a doctor wouldn't have you get lab work done and then send you the lab report and not help you understand what it means. So we look at the tools the same way, that these are tools we use to come up with a strategy to help the health of your business. And we want to be long-term partners to make sure that when different things change as your business ages, just like your body ages, that we're aware of those things and we're aware of the market. A lot of my clients don't have time to be reading the latest report about what employees want or how to hire in today's market or how to handle this situation or that. And so, we stay up to date and stay educated so that we know the latest trends in hiring or marketing, or bringing an expert for something that we're not aware of, but we're just trying to be that partner that helps them with the gaps.
I love the long-term, the intentional long-term conversation. So many of us have been conditioned by short-term transaction, get the deal, get somebody hired, get a body in the seat. And we don't look at the fact that there's all these, then we later say, well, there were unintended consequences. Well, there was unintended consequences because we didn't look beyond this afternoon. And, if we look longer into the future and we preview what can happen, we get different answers all the time. So I'm assuming that will be part of the conversations you have with your clients and your prospects and your partners.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things we talk about a lot is culture, and is the culture going to change, and how culture is going to change profitability. And so I think if you look at everybody defines culture differently, for one. So we have to figure out, what does culture even mean first?
Yep.
I think it's kind of one of these buzzwords right now that everybody's culture, but culture has to do with like our behaviors and our values, what we believe in, how we do things, how we communicate, our language. And absolutely, culture is changing. Our values are changing. The way that we work is changing. So much is changing as far as our culture. And so is it going to affect, our profit and culture combined? Absolutely. So is it people working from home, or a hybrid situation, or what is the new way that people work? And I think as long as we continue to work with our clients to have that unified message, here's what we're all working for. Being aware of yourself, your own stereotypes or assumptions.
Yep.
That's going to improve our leaders. Leaders who are self-aware are better leaders. It's going to improve our communication. And then having clarity of roles and responsibilities. Everyone knows what they're doing and where they're sitting on the bus and what they're supposed to be doing on the bus to get to keep things moving forward. And so without that, it's just chaos. So being committed to long-term solutions where we all know what we're working towards, and being aware of what's going on in the world with changing culture.
I love the way you phrase that, because you brought up, the hybrid or the remote, and kind of the inference in part of the conversation was our culture today sometimes are temporary staff, or outsourced staff, or fractional staff, or partner organizations, or, the list goes on. And every time somebody gets a new idea, the list gets bigger. But they're part of what we do. And I think also what I read into part of what you said is that, somebody that works for us, and it could be an example like your daughter that may work here for 3 or 4 years, and then they may go someplace else. Well, when they go someplace else, they could become your best referral source. They could become your best business partner. They could become your best customer. And when we think about the culture in that new way, and we recognize that when people leave us, it doesn't mean they're deserters or they're our enemies, or, things like that, and that there's value in treating everybody that believes in our purpose and that wants to help, treat them as part of the team, make them, glad they connected with us. So I think that's going to be an important part of the uncovered revenue you're going to help lead people to, is that recognition of all those opportunities to make their business better and the lives of all the people in the business better.
Right. I think some of our work focuses on making sure that everybody within those organizations is working as a cohesive part, cohesively towards the mission. But then, like you brought up, if it's a temporary person or a fractional person or somebody who's here just for a year or two, or whatever, it's a temporary role, but how important those relationships are. And you have interns, and those interns could go work for one of your vendors or one of your partners. And so that person might not seem like the most important role in the company today, but it's about the people and the relationships and what value each person brings to the experience.
And when I think about today, how one of the biggest challenges for all of us is, how do we get people to recognize who we are so that we have a chance to have a conversation? And in this digital world, often that recognition still comes from that intern that worked with us 2 years ago, and they're in a new position today, and they say, I think Nicole knows how to solve this problem. Do you want me to set up a call with Nicole? And that's where the opportunity to have that first conversation with a client comes from is somebody who trusts us already, whether they were a customer, whether they were a partner, whether they were the intern, whether they were the office manager of the building next door. If they trust us, they pass that trust on to other people that we would really like to know and build a relationship with. And I think that's going to be one of the most important things collectively we've all got to learn. It's how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I always have taught my kids, and I always say, like, I never burn bridges. And an opportunity with one company may not work out, but it usually works out to be better for, it always works out to be better for me when I leave and move on to something else. But I think a lot of times leaders are so committed to being loyal to their people, or they've built these relationships and they're afraid to send someone on to their next opportunity. Or people are afraid to leave positions because of various reasons, that they're afraid of the future or whatever. But if we're not in a place of our purpose, or we don't believe someone really fits the organization or the purpose, I think it's an obligation to move on yourself, or to move that person on to their next opportunity to really be, in their best place. I think we're all here for a reason, and I hate to see people held back by dysfunctional organizations and dysfunctional leadership, or even just, your own dysfunction. But because it's a risk to move forward, but I think it's a bigger risk to stay in a place that you don't belong.
Well, one of the things that I took away from what you were just talking about is, if somebody creates a scenario in our lives and we look at it and we say, wow, this is it's either out of integrity, or it's inconsistent with our purpose, or it clearly has an unintended consequence that I can see that nobody's going to like it. If we don't train people that we mean our purpose matters, or we mean our integrity matters, or when you say you've empowered me to be part of your team, you need to expect me to share my unintended consequence observation. And if I don't do any of those things, that's on me, because I'm letting you believe I don't care, I don't know, I'm not committed, whatever it is they're interpreting. I have some control over how I'm training you or teaching you, or giving you an experience with me to get a better idea of who I am.
Right. I think, I don't know who said it, we teach people how to treat us. And if we lose our voice, we're teaching people that we don't need to be heard. And so it's so important to make sure that we are, when we see things and we see opportunities for improvement, or we see things that are, not good for the organization, or we have ideas that might be good, to speak up and to have an environment where that is, where that's open, where leaders want to hear those types of conversations.
Now, I'm going to make an assumption, but I hope it's right on. I'm assuming that part of the work you've traditionally done and are going to be doing in the future is helping people with the skills to be able to make their voice heard, to be able to be clear, and to be able to collaborate rather than confront kind of scenario. Is that a true statement about uncovered revenue?
Absolutely. I think, since we started studying this, one of the things we talk about with a lot of our clients is the true north, and having a set of rules to live by, a set of standards to make decisions, who we will work with, who we won't work with, what types of work we will do and what we will not do, what's a good fit for our company and what isn't, and when it's time to move on, or various different things. So the true north is definitely something that we're already teaching and working with our clients on. And then also something from revenue science that I've really adopted wholeheartedly is dumping the dumb stuff. And that's the stuff that isn't moving the needle, that doesn't really matter. And so sticking with the stuff that, and stuff is such a generic word, right? But doing the tasks and doing the things that are in the place of our purpose, that are moving the needle, either to impact lives and help people, or build the organization.
Yeah, I just finished reading the new biography on Elon Musk, and people can like him or not like him, but he has some very interesting, his true north is he has a whole series of Elon-isms. And one of them is, if whatever it is you're doing isn't a rule of physics or a rule of math, you have to question whether you need to be doing it. And I thought, wow, what a great way to think about empowerment. And, my ability to stand on my own when I see something I think is wrong, that if it isn't created by the laws of physics or the laws of math, maybe it is wrong. And I should be able to ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that was a great takeaway from the book, because it breaks my normal thinking. Well, it's a rule. I should follow the rule. And the way he built Teslas to, challenge the rules. So.
Right. When I did real estate in Texas, I worked with a team of incredible women, and they took myself and another young woman on, younger than myself, to be buyer's agents for the team. And she was much younger than me, and was very into like the Instagram, a lot more social media savvy than myself or any of the other women on the team. But when she'd come to business meetings, she would be in her pajamas and would come into the office in her pajamas and whatever. But when she was on Instagram or working with clients, she looked like a runway model. She was beautiful. She was professional. She was put together. But these meetings in the office didn't really matter. And that, that was such a topic of debate and conversation. But ultimately, it didn't matter, because she made more money than anybody else on the team, because she went outside the box, did things the new way. I mean, she was selling homes through her Instagram account and building relationships there before really anyone else was. And the meetings, it really didn't matter what we were wearing or how we looked, she was there, and so we all learned a lesson from that. And so just understanding differences, different people, different values. And like you said, the rules in Detroit, people still, wear a suit to work. And I don't know anywhere else in the country where that really happens. But the rules, are the rules important? Do they make sense? Do we need to stick to them?
So let's take that for a second. Now, clearly you're transitioning, your business and your practice. Tell me what you think 3 or 5 years out is going to be important. What should, your practice and your clients be expecting from your practice going out 3 to 5 years? How do you want to be known, and what's the value you want to transfer to them?
I want them to understand that we are building the future together, that I care about them and I care about their company, that I understand their business, and not just them and the business, but the people that are on their team. And when they add someone to their team, that it's really important to make sure that that person understands how other people want to be communicated to, and what's important to their culture. But also that everyone on the team understands this person, isn't just a carbon copy that's going to fit nice and neat on their team, but here's what we need to know about this person too. So that so I want to be committed. I want people to know that we're committed to helping them grow the organization and the people, and really creating experiences. I think in the future, companies that focus on experiences, people experiences, customers and employee journeys, companies that are building relationships that are based on transferring value, not just with their customers, but also with their employees, so that we don't have this revolving door where people can go to work and they feel like they're valued, and they can be themselves, and they can bring their whole self to work, and they're going to be respected. So I think the biggest change we're seeing in the next 3 to 5 years, 10 years, is being really focused on experience. And I think that's the only way that businesses are going to be able to compete against giant commodity selling companies that are just selling goods and services and eliminating the people out of the mix.
I really like that. I hadn't heard it said that way before, but experiences are a clear metric, and so we're trying to learn how to measure whether what we're doing is successful or not. And experience is one of the ways that absolutely you can measure that. And if people's experiences, I hate coming to work, or their experiences, I just want to take really long bathroom breaks so I don't have to talk to my boss, or, those kinds of things, there's a measurement there that we should be paying attention to.
Well, and that's not only affecting the bottom line for the company, but I think that lack of purpose for people in positions is also adding to the mental health crisis in the country, in the world. And so if leaders can create purposeful organizations with purposeful positions, we can, start attacking that mental health crisis too.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you think about the purpose, and once people use the purpose as the yardstick, then it's not, are you the same as the person next to you? It's, how do you help us achieve the purpose? And maybe it's your uniqueness that really sets us apart and takes us as a team to the next level. So
yeah, I love that. I love when I'm working with someone and they discover something they didn't know about themselves, or they realize something, oh, that's why I'm that way, or that's why I think that way or work that way. Oh, now it makes sense. Those kind of aha moments that really speak to the uniqueness that people bring to an organization.
Well, and those are almost like you're giving them the key to release the superpower.
I love that word. I love the superpowers.
Yeah, that they've held things in, and I see it in my own kids, and I see it in people that work for me, that they get to the point where that gets released, and they're totally different, and they're happier, and they're energized, and maybe they do or don't stay where they are at the moment, but they're always going to remember where they were when this happened as a great place in their life. And we're going to get benefit out of that, and they're going to get a wonderful life, and the next place they go, it's even going to be better.
Well, and I'm sure over the years, that ebbs and flows, that
Yep.
being excited about your purpose and knowing what you're supposed to be doing, and, really living in your superpower. Our superpowers expand and change. And so, that is part of that long-term relationship with somebody that I may be working with now, who is, graduating from college. And then in, 10 years, where are they, and what's their superpower, and how do we optimize that person's potential?
Yeah. And, the flip of that, when you see somebody that they have potential, and they're not using it, and they're unhappy, if you're far enough back, you can see what it's doing to them, and what it's doing to their family, and what it's doing to the organizations they work in. So that's got to get reversed so that the superpower comes out, so that all of those get the benefits of who that person is and what they're capable of.
And how do we get leaders to understand the value of people working in their superpower? Because it's a budget line. It's a line item for, finding that human potential and finding, the superpowers and making sure that we're optimizing people. And so, hopefully in the next couple of years, and I think it will happen, that organizations are going to value the people so much that's going to become part of the budget, is, the more growth and more uncovering potential.
Well, and I have a background in cost accounting, and I think it's just the fact that we established the way we create financial metrics 100 and some years ago. And we need a new, not that those should be thrown away, but that we need a whole new group on top that recognize all the powers that come out of innovation, collaboration, creativity, agility, that we never recognized those things before. We recognize, can you do the exact same thing you did yesterday, just a little faster? And the things we did yesterday, maybe yesterday was before the pandemic, today's a pandemic. I don't do any of those things I did yesterday. And it doesn't matter if it's a pandemic, a great recession, a 9/11. We seem to have an abundance of these things. So we need to come up with a new set of metrics. So
absolutely. No, I think it's difficult to put a number on the value. It's difficult to measure the value of building relationships and understanding people. And so I don't think that's always prioritized in business until it's too late.
I think one of the things that to me is exciting about what you and Dan are doing is you bring the two halves to the metrics together. One half is I need to understand both the person and the person's ability to impact the world around them. And then I need to understand the organization and the organization's ability to be impacted by and to have an impact on the people. Because often when we only look at one side or the other, we get a metric and we go, I got a metric. But what we're not realizing is it's like a teeter-totter. If you get this metric way up, you just whack the other one way down. And we got to get past that and treat it as, they're part of the same team. And one can't fail and say the other one won. That's just not how it works going forward.
Right. We're struggling with that with one of our clients right now, trying to help them understand that they have to work as a cohesive unit, and they can't just have these different departments all working on their own goals and their own numbers.
Yep. And and one of the things I know comes out of the assessment work and the history of your career is this difference between and people often say, boy, if I could just get my team to cooperate. Well, when they can't get them to cooperate, they're never going to get them to collaborate. And the value is really going to come from the collaboration, not from just forcing them to cooperate because you're going to fire them or something. And if you can't even get that done, you're already in a world of hurt.
And that's one of the things we do with our discovery sessions when we go into an organization. We always go with two people. Dan and I always will do a project together, because what I'm doing and what I see is not necessarily what he sees. We look at the organization through a different lens, and so we can help our clients that way add more value by bringing both of our knowledge together, and then collaborating to come up with a strategy to help them from different angles also. Yeah.
Well, we could have this conversation for another 2 hours without any trouble. But to, kind of bring this to not quite to the end, but almost, what's your advice? And first, your advice to young people coming in, and you have talked about your daughter into the business world, and then to the senior leaders. What should the new people coming in, and what should the senior people independently, first tell us about one and then the other, what should they be thinking about or doing or paying attention to or working on?
Well, I think it's the same. I think people need to pay attention. I think leaders need to pay attention to what's going on in the world, what's going on with the workforce today. I think that young people need to pay attention to the experience and the knowledge that leaders have, and then collaborate to make those meet in the middle. I think people need to listen. Sometimes we're so busy trying to figure things out in our head, or what our next step is, or how can we get the upper hand, or make it. We're not just listening. And I think if leaders would listen to young people, open-minded, and young people would listen to us seasoned people. I'm not going to say older, experienced professionals. We can add a lot of value to each other, but then also look in the mirror. What are your strengths? Build self-awareness. What are your opportunities for growth? And what are you just not good at, where you probably shouldn't spend your time and energy?
Yes.
And I think maybe, I already said it, but being open-minded, being open to change, being open to disrupting the way that we've always done things, or the way you thought it was going to be done. There might be a better way to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I was listening, I was trying to listen correctly, but I kept hearing curiosity, as opposed to, I'm going to tell you what this is about. I would hope people are curious about why you think that, or what you know about this I don't know, or I don't think a lot of us are as curious as it could be. And then the ability to clarify when people will share and help you address that curiosity, then have conversation to clarify what do they mean and why do they mean that. To me, there's just so much we can learn and accomplish when we do it that way.
Yeah, one of the things that I've really enjoyed about learning from you and listening to your stories is you are so open-minded to the way things have changed since you started working, since your career started. But yet you share how the way that you did things before, how there's good and bad, how, it wasn't always the best, but this part of it worked well. And how you see both sides. And I think if leaders could lead from that place of, we didn't always do it perfect, but some of the stuff worked, and I see how you're doing it could be better. I just have really enjoyed the stories that you've told in that way. There is so much valuable experience in the world that, in the way people are changing how they exit the workforce. They're not really exiting. They might stay on, as a consultant or part-time or whatever. And so taking advantage of the experienced leaders who have seen a lot and learned a lot. And, I just think there's so much value there that I encourage young people, young professionals, to really pay attention.
Wow. We could go another 2 hours pretty easy. But what's the last thing you'd like to leave with the audience? One thing that you'd like everybody just be thinking about and take forward with them.
Well, I think that revenue science is can be used in more than just business. If you're trying to transfer value, whatever the value is, if you can create a message from the other person's perspective, your buyer's perspective, help them preview what life's going to look like after they do, or or take advantage of whatever you're trying to, let's say, sell. If you try to speak the other person's language in getting them to buy into your offers, I can see that like the revenue science can go into like, you know, negotiating an offer for a position, or negotiating with a 2-year-old to take a nap, or negotiating to get a table at your favorite restaurant. You know, what are you trying to transfer here? What do you need? And how do you get the other person to buy in? And it's previewing the outcome in their language.
Well, thank you. And Nicole, this has been wonderful. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm really going to be excited to watch what you and Dan are going to be, the value you're going to be transferring to your clients over the coming years. And so that's going to be fun. And hopefully I'm doing this long enough, I'll get you back in a year or two and you can tell us, you know, the progress you've made.
Thank you. I would love that. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank all of you for joining us today. As always, this will show up on all of your audio places for podcast, and it's on YouTube, and it's on our website, and it'll be there for a long time. And I hope you come back and join us the next time. Thanks.